Okay, morning everyone. This is the July meeting of the steering committee of the Vermont Climate Council. David is gallivanting in Europe, having a lovely summer vacation with his family. So you have me today to help facilitate this meeting. I am going to briefly share the agenda. It is really hard to work for.
I could also, I can share my screen.
Okay, I think I can. There it is. And Liz can't see it. Okay, great. Okay, hopefully you can all see it. So we reached out to you all about holding this meeting. There was a really substantive climate council meeting back in June. So appreciative that many of you could make it today so we could do a little bit of reflection of what we heard at the June meeting. First, we'll approve minutes. Then we'll dive into that, and then we'll talk a little bit about upcoming planning work and alignment with the Climate Council, understanding that Public Service Department just launched their public engagement plan for the Comprehensive Energy Plan. And then based on those conversations, we'll just do some preliminary planning to help tee up for the August steering committee meeting topics that you'd like to cover for the September Climate Council meeting. Man. Where's my stop share now?
Can you expand, go to the right and expand your camera?
Sorry.
And then
it's not. Yes, yeah. Let's share again.
Oh,
sorry, hold on. Can't I stop sharing?
what is this in the arrow?
Hold on. I got it over here. I'm gonna if Liz, if you're on,
yeah.
I'm gonna stop using double screen and let you. Thinks it's smarter than me. And now I'm going to put my video on. Oh, sorry about that. So would folks like a minute to run through the minutes? Do you have access to them or would you like me to share them on screen?
I move approval.
Okay.
Well, we don't need to move approval, do we? Never mind.
Unless anybody has any edits or comments, we'll just move them as approved. Great. Okay, so thinking back to June and the steering committee and the Climate Council conversation, there was a lot presented to you all by myself, updates from the Climate Action Office. We were joined by Casey Kadams from the U.S. Climate Alliance to hear about federal impacts to states and state climate goals and the work that's still able to move ahead in spite of federal rollbacks. Eric Foran gave a great update on work being rolled out through VEM and mandated through FEMA changes. And then finally, we started to have a conversation about what we were hearing, what priorities there were for you as a climate council, and what you'd like to tackle in the coming year. So understanding that one of those topics in particular was around the Comprehensive Energy Plan and public engagement. Joey suggested that we have that as a separate agenda item along with the survey results that actually are working both to inform work in the Climate Action Office as well as priorities in the Climate Action Plan. So we can talk about that. We can talk about anything else that came up as conversation and look ahead to what that means for your work in the coming year and particularly anything you'd like to focus in on at the September Climate Council meeting. So any thoughts from any of you about what you heard or anything you'd like to think about for future meetings?
I'll just note, I'm hopeful that the RPCs will again have access to funding to do our local liaison and local emergency planning support function, but we've been on hold since October because of FEMA rules. We're still unclear on what the sub-applicant rules are going to be. This is a nationwide issue, but right now we're still not operational as we have been. So That's problematic because I can already tell that the regular contact, we've all tried to maintain it as best we can. But the regular contact we have with all of our EMDs and all is kind of eroding. So it'd be good to get this squared away as soon as possible. But just wanted to let y'all know because in the climate action plan, it talks a lot about the RPC role in supporting municipalities and because we use EMPG to support a lot of our resilience work and mitigation work with towns.
Thanks, Chris. Just
We also still have to figure out how to fund the municipal updates of their local hazard mitigation plans. The state, we still don't have a strategy on how we're going to fund those things because the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program will no longer cover that.
thanks. Since you have the luck of having me facilitating today, I'll just note that the Climate Action Office has a partnership with RPCs right now to help support rollout of the Municipal Planning Guide pilot program. And we are thinking a lot about as we hire a new resilience coordinator. I think at the Climate Council meeting, I let you all know that Marion's been promoted to the resilience lead in our office, and we're hiring a new coordinator position and thinking a lot about how that position will help provide technical assistance directly to towns, but most importantly, also through RPCs around climate planning, municipal resilience planning, and thinking about how we continue to partner with VEM and others on that as well as we roll out our climate guides this fall. So hopefully there'll be some opportunities for synergies around planning that happens. That's critical that you're referring to too, that where rollbacks are impacting that ability. Julie, nice to see you.
Okay. I thought the presentation from the Climate Alliance was really helpful and just am interested in potentially thinking about how we can continue to hear from other states in the region about what they're doing. I think that Casey's overview was really instructive, but also pretty high level, recognizing he works with 24 states. But I wonder about if folks from Massachusetts or New York or Maine or Rhode Island might also be willing to share a similar sort of set of reflections on their state's work. I think understanding where other states in the region are more specifically could be a really helpful follow-up to his presentation.
Thanks, Julie. And as Julie knows, we've been talking to those states that have similar climate laws to us about challenges and opportunities ahead of that. And I think that there's a nice cohort of states that would be willing to come, either supported by the Climate Alliance, to put together another presentation for the fall to talk more specifically about the Northeast. That would be great. Joey.
Just a quick question following up on that. I totally agree. Is it on their website, or do you know, Jane, and could share with us like what their subgroups they already have are and like what states like those I think that Julie just mentioned in particular? I'd be interested if like on transportation in particular, like what are the subgroups that the Climate Alliance has and which states near us are participating in those? That might be helpful just to understand if that's easy to share. And then one other reflection, just while I'm off mute before Alex, is just, it was noted at the last council meeting that we hadn't ever, like data centers didn't really come up, and that maybe that's something we can follow up on too.
Yes.
Because
So sorry to interrupt you, Joey. I was going to say I'd be happy to send out there are sort of two levels of groups at the Climate Alliance. There are work groups and all states participate in work groups, and then there are coalitions that are moving certain things like buy clean policies. There's a clean cars coalition that is different from their transportation work group. And so I'd be happy to share both the difference between the work groups, which all states, 24 states participate in all of those, and the coalitions, and you can see which states have signed on to which coalitions. So that can be a follow-up after this. And as Casey noted, there is a data center cohort, which means that it's a subset of those work groups. And so I can share that along with it. And I believe I owed you all some information about what the data center groups were working on. And that would be an easy, more detailed follow-up for that one as well. Alex, normally we love to hear from Climate Council members as well as the steering committee members. So I assume we've had a little bit of ebb and flow about who's representing the ag agency. So assume maybe you're here for on Nicole's benefit, and so happy to have you make a comment if you'd like.
Now I'm not sure. I guess I would just say I love that idea that Julie had for us, and from what I've seen, sort of touching on Johanna's comment and your explanation of the work groups, which I'd love to see as a follow-up. The most relevant work we've been seeing is in New York State from an ag sector perspective, and it's a dairy state with a very strong land grant extension presence. We work together pretty commonly. They've given a lot of thought to ag sector emissions. So that's kind of what I would love to hear more from about what they do. And it's on, like, I love the fact that you could, and Climate Coalition could kind of curate who has the most relevant stuff, because that does matter. If we hear from just one state, they're going to blather on about what they're doing, and it may not be all that relevant. Sorry, that's a little bit strong language there. Not be all that relevant, or very specific to what they think, to what they know. Thank you.
That's great. And New York in particular just made modifications to their climate law. And actually it was very impactful around agriculture because they changed the way they're doing their accounting. So yes, New York would be an interesting state to hear from, but others as well. Sounds like we have some to-dos. I'm trying to think about anything else relevant from the agenda. It seems like, Chris, your interest around federal money flowing through to RPCs, et cetera, just highlights the importance of continued information around federal rollbacks and the implications for the state. And I imagine that in some way that should be an ongoing agenda topic for the Climate Council, understanding that so much of the work we do, both at the state level and then trickle down to municipalities, is impacted by federal rollbacks. So we can continue to think about how that comes up. Any other comments or reflections on follow-up from June's council meeting? Okay, the next agenda item was for us to talk about the comprehensive energy plan. Joey, you requested this specifically for the agenda, so I'll let you tee up the question, and then I'm happy to reflect on what I understand is happening with respect to coordination between the engagement work that was done by the Climate Council ahead of the Climate Action Plan, and then the engagement work the CAO does on a regular basis and how it all works together for the CEP.
That would be great. I mean, basically, that was my question or thought, which is there's a lot of that is already and should be part of the Climate Action Plan. And so what are they doing? What's like, and just to make sure that councils are aware. And so that for the public, we can make sure that these two big things that are deeply interrelated are people understand how they're connected, and that we can help foster synchronizing these efforts as opposed to just having it be another planning process. So the question is just like, how are they interrelating, and what's any light you can shed on the public engagement process, and et cetera. And I know that there were some changes to the public engagement that passed this year. And if you know those, Jane, that synced up and sort of minimize some of the potentially like redundant components of the planning process. If that's relevant, share it. If not, never mind.
I think folks know that in the Global Warming Solutions Act, because the Comprehensive Energy Plan has already been around, there's a lot of overlap between the CEP and the Climate Action Plan. There's also distinct responsibilities of the Climate Action Plan and distinct responsibilities of the CEP that are different. But there is a lot of alignment, especially around emissions reductions and planning and programming around in that space. So in the Global Warming Solutions Act, there was a requirement that the CEP and the Climate Action Plan be coordinated. For folks who are around for the first Climate Action Plan, you will recall that we were writing both plans at the same time. And that was, while a monumental feat, made it easier to coordinate the two plans, very closely aligned. The large differences also include the fact that the Climate Council is the lead author responsible for the Climate Action Plan, and the CEP is largely an administrative plan with public engagement input in it. So the Climate Action Plan is updated every 4 years. The CEP is updated every 6 years. So only every 12 years or so we get to have the joy of doing them at the same time. So they're a little bit off cycle. And so the CEP is due in January 2028. And the public engagement plan was just launched for that update. The great news about the Public Service Department is they have a newer staff member, very similar roles and responsibilities to Sophie Veltrop in our office. So someone who leads community engagement and public engagement, Ricarda Erickson. And Sophie Veltrop in our office and Ricarda work very closely together on aligning community engagement, public engagement, thinking about review of past engagement and setting priorities for gaps to focus on and opportunities to hear from more voices in service of the CEP. So they meet weekly, Ricarda and Sophie, to align engagement. And the first step you'll see in the CEP's public engagement plan was to review past engagement and understand how that shapes and informs priorities. Much of that was the Climate Action Plan engagement to think about where they could further invest in resources to get out to Vermonters. And this summer, they're aligning on both meeting people where they are, going out to events, doing focus groups, and then obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but the polling that you all heard about that we just completed the first round of is being used to shape the technical analysis that we're doing out of our office, but really deeply coordinated with VTrans and Public Service Department as one avenue that work will go into the CEP. So everything I would say around the administration's roles, and I shouldn't leave ag out. Ag has actually been a really great partner in thinking about the updates to the modeling and some of the questions we've been asking in the polling too. We've been working very closely with the ag department as well, understanding that ag is a sector as well for emissions reductions. And so although I will say VTrans and Public Service Department and ANR are meeting more than you all can imagine to talk about modeling and engagement and how to work those two things together. So yes, it's happening engagement, and I think that likely they weren't ready to bring that public engagement plan because it was still moving its way through the ranks and starting to happen to the June Climate Council meeting. But I suspect and would welcome asking the Public Service Department if they'd be interested in coming to the Climate Council meeting in September to talk about the work of the CEP. We could talk a little bit more about our polling, about the climate and energy spending analysis that we're doing with VTrans and Public Service Department that will inform the CEP and then also inform other more near-term work that the administration would like to do around emissions reduction. So the silos are sort of broken down in state government. We're working really closely on all of this, and there's probably a role to advise by the Climate Council if we can come and present that work in September. Joey.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate that. One other question, just in terms of aligning with the Climate Council's work and a role for the Climate Council is, just wondering if like the Just Transition Subcommittee, for example, if they're doing public engagement outreach, is the Just Transition Subcommittee been involved or made aware of that and informing that? And then same for like the modeling analysis, the Science and Data Subcommittee, have they been? It feels like there was a lot of interaction between those two subcommittees in particular in between some of the climate action plan updates, and I would love to see that again and if that's possible with the subcommittees, just to keep our work as closely aligned as possible.
Yeah. So first point to the Just Transitions, Kelly, I haven't read it in detail, but Abby Willard and Kelly do an excellent job of keeping their subcommittee up to date monthly. They send out great emails that with Sophie's help, the three of them, that provides detailed updates on the ongoing work for engagement and elsewhere in the Climate Council. And Kelly, I know just a week or two ago, there was a great update. So I'm not sure how much the subcommittee is apprised of this specifically, but I know they're being kept up to date and broadly and often are asked questions about when you'll meet again, et cetera, to discuss things. So not sure if you have anything else to add there about specifically how Just Transitions is or isn't informed about much of this.
Yeah, well, yes, we've been sending out roughly once a month, sending out updates and making sure that, yeah, any sort of new information about public engagement is going to be shared with them. So I think the quarterly engagement report is going to be ready, and we'll send that out next month. And then we'll be meeting after the next Climate Council meeting for the first time in several months. So that will be another opportunity for anything that comes up at that, which it sounds like there might be some more updates between them and then on other public engagement efforts. That would be, yeah, something that we'll probably be putting on the agenda for that October meeting, to make sure people are aware. But yeah, even just reports that are coming out in the meantime that are relevant, we've been just trying to share those links out. Who knows how much people have bandwidth to be reading through it, but we wanted to point out some of the really helpful stuff that came out of the last Climate Council meeting and say, like, watch the video here if you want Jane's amazing explanation for, yeah. So that's what we've been up to.
And then with respect to the modeling, this has been all work that's been happening within state government and state coordinated. But I know that the intent of the timeline that we articulated was that the premise of updating both the business as usual model and then ultimately our scenarios in the model for meeting emissions reductions over a set trajectory was that we as state government weren't all fully understanding and invested in the assumptions within the modeling. And so a lot of the work we've been doing has been a really deep dive with state staff to really get buy-in and an understanding of how the LEAP modeling works and what the assumptions are around the emissions reductions trajectories. And the idea had been that that work needed to happen with state staff first and foremost. And then the idea was starting, I believe, in our timeline was in September to start to have some public meetings about updates to the modeling, and then ultimately in October and beyond, have a broader set of conversations with the public around different scenario options for modeling. And so I suspect that would align for starting to pull in the Climate Council in the fall, for awareness about the modeling. Jared, I think your hand went up first, but I'm not sure. My screen is funny that normally it's whoever's goes up first shows first, but then Chris's is up too. So whoever went first, go for it.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, I would just say I'm uncomfortable with this kind of distinction of like state staff on the one side and then the public and the council on the other. As I view it, the council is a state appointed body. And it's really important that the Science and Data Subcommittee and its members and members of the Climate Council are also comfortable with the assumptions used in the modeling and the scenarios if it's going to inform the plan that we co-author and that we pass. So, and I do have many questions and concerns about modeling assumptions, approaches, what's in, what's out, why. And so I would just strongly encourage you to treat the Science and Data Subcommittee and members of the council as closer partners in terms of the review of assumptions and scenario analysis rather than kind of waiting until the end. I think that's what we've seen over the years is that we run into the biggest problems when we're not in transparent and open and collaborative conversation from the beginning, and things get presented at the end that folks feel have flaws and are not helpful to our work. So I hope that you'll move from just kind of an interagency approach and treat the Climate Council more as a partner that is a state body and is not just a member of the public.
Thanks for that. And just to the first point about the public versus the Climate Council, for the public, we're very much thinking about the way the survey we just did was to try to get a statistically viable population sample to inform the modeling and some of the scenario work we're doing. So I don't mean to say that we're not doing public engagement. We're actually doing just a different kind of public engagement than we often do by launching the survey to inform some of the scenarios. And then the Climate Council, the modeling that we're doing is right now is very much informed by the recommendations in the Climate Action Plan and guided by. It's not anything different. And there's just been a need to work really closely with state agencies. This is not modeling to inform a climate action plan. This is just the work of state government to do additional modeling and understanding to refine the climate action plan recommendations and actually look a lot at some of the work that was articulated in the signing statement by the administration about looking at costs and the cost impacts of the climate action plan recommendations. So it is not intended to not be with the Climate Council. It's just, as you know, Jared, there's lots of cooks in the kitchen and a need to spend a lot of time. And as I suggested earlier, we're meeting multiple times a week to talk about the assumptions and really understand the questions. And so it's just a level of work and commitment that's hard right now. But I value the subcommittee's opinions as well as the Climate Council. And you and I can talk offline about how to specifically involve the Science and Data Subcommittee. And then even more so, I would say the cross-sector mitigation subcommittee, since it informs scenarios, et cetera. Yes.
Just a heads up, I'm gonna try hopefully engage with the Department of Public Service around thinking about what municipalities can actually do, so that we can gear more municipal action around where we've identified like actual practical results from engagement around the climate, the comprehensive energy plan, and to me, this also relates to the climate action plan. I think there's a lot of assumptions that are made about like what do towns actually have the capacity to make a real difference to reduce emissions. And I representing municipal government. I just have a real interest in really focusing what are primarily volunteer hours towards what they can actually do. And to me, this is kind of a soft cost of implementation. Again, not at all opposed to the goals of the climate action plan or the comprehensive energy plan, but if we could really focus on the real world difference that they can make as opposed to kind of hypotheticals, it would be, I think, more beneficial to them and result in greater action. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up that I'm hoping to have that conversation.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Mindful of time, I'm just going to pause for a second before I synthesize what I see as some critical next steps for the Climate Council meeting in September that'll help us prepare for our August steering committee. But seeing that there are some members of the public or members who are also not on the steering committee, if anybody would like to make a public comment, now would be a great time. Not seeing any. Thanks for joining, though, today and listening in. It sounds like for the September Climate Council meeting, there's been a bunch of topics teed up. And so thinking ahead to that, in August, when we meet as a steering committee, Liz and I will work closely with David to prepare a draft agenda for the September Climate Council meeting. I know we'll think about the modeling work that the state government is doing, how to involve the Climate Council, both at a Climate Council meeting, but also engage with the subcommittees. There's the polling work. We have the preliminary results of now, but we'll be doing focus groups in the coming 2 months, as well as repolling based on those focus groups. And we'll have a detailed report by September. We can talk about the collaboration between the CEP and the CAP, and then hopefully work with the Climate Alliance to hone a presentation more refined on work in the Northeast and our other states, to hear from them, to understand work that they're doing specifically around advancing climate action. I'm sure there's more, and luckily, even though David wasn't here, Charlotte is here and it was taking great notes. And so we'll work really closely to put together those agendas. And in the interim, we'll reach out to you, Jared, and others to talk specifically about some of the engagement work, et cetera, with the modeling. So, Jared, final word for the day.
Thanks, Jane. Just because you're mentioning the update for the Climate Council meeting regarding the public polling that was done, I hadn't seen that before. I don't know if anyone on the council had before it went out, but I know somebody who received it. And so I saw some of the questions that were in the poll. And I would just really strongly encourage care and nuance in presenting results, because of, I certainly had concerns around the survey design. I'll give one example. There was a question that said, thinking specifically about the energy that powers your appliances, heats your home, and fuels your vehicle, which of the following is most important? And there was a list that you had to choose between that were presented as kind of mutually exclusive, rather than recognizing that people can have many priorities and that they're not counter to each other. So, for instance, on the list about what is most important, one was keeping energy costs down. Another was minimizing greenhouse gases that cause climate change. And as we've seen, for folks that want to keep energy costs down, the biggest impacts in the last year have been the massive price spikes in gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil, 40 to 50%, that have really spiked household and business costs because of exposure to global commodity markets and the aftermath of the war in Iran. So I had hoped we were past this, presenting kind of lowering energy costs and climate action as though they're in opposition to each other. And I think we know that they're not, that one of the best ways to reduce costs for people is to move to more efficient and cleaner technologies that reduce exposure and reliance on the most expensive and price volatile fossil fuels. So just want to encourage real care and thought and nuance, and not over interpreting results that were presented as mutually exclusive rather than common interests.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Jared. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much for joining on a Monday morning. Hope you all find a chance to enjoy the beautiful day. See you all soon.
Thanks,
Thanks
Jane.
all.